Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast, your premier Arizona Cardinal podcast. Like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. Johnny Venerable, Brack. The calendar has turned to April, which means it's officially draft month, Brack. But the closer we get to the draft, it also means it's the month of BS. The BS is flowing not only on NFL streets, but on Twitter streets.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we start today's show. Albert Breer reporting, or kind of reporting, that teams are awaiting the Cardinals, not to call them about a trade for Hopkins, but to just outright release the all-pro receiver. Please help me. This is not how I wanted to spend my day here on April 3rd.
This is my message to those teams, and it comes from the movie Dodgeball. It's a bold strategy. It's a bold strategy to just wait for the Arizona Cardinals to just outright release DeAndre Hopkins from their roster in order to pick him up. It ain't happening. That's not happening. I mean, as far as DeAndre Hopkins, he's not getting released by the Cardinals. If receivers like malign receivers, embattled receivers like Randy Moss and Antonio Brown can fetch draft picks, if Robbie, the artist formerly known as Robbie Anderson, Chosen Anderson, can get 2 draft picks, the Arizona Cardinals couldn't get 1 from any team that would want to add a wide receiver 1 to the roster. It's absurd. It's teams just trying to negotiate this in a public forum, and it's being poorly done at this point. It's like they've run out of options for a team like the New England Patriots that has 11 draft picks to sit there and say, we're not going to give up a single pick for DeAndre Hopkins is just absurd to me.
Yeah, enjoy sucking. Enjoy having Juju Smith-Schuster and his TikTok dances atop your receiver depth chart. Listen, we know it's a reset year for the Cardinals, and we're just kind of taking it as it comes. The Patriots, these teams that are interested on D-Hop, that are awaiting, they need D-Hop more than the Cardinals need D-Hop. But it doesn't mean the Cardinals, as Bo mentioned, are going to release DeAndre Hopkins. The Cardinals have the 3rd or 4th most salary cap space right now in the NFL. And that's going to only balloon up. They've got some post-June 1st releases that'll become official not too long after the fact. Shit, man, they could cut guys like Dennis Gardeck at the drop of a hat tomorrow. You don't cut DeAndre Hopkins to what? Free up a receiver, an undrafted kid to take a spot over the course of the summer? No, that's ridiculous. They don't need to be able to swallow the dead money that's associated with it. I know we're going to get to that here in a second, but this whole thing, like every time I get on Twitter, and God love you guys, just tagging us in these ridiculous posts. I was going to say our guy Dove on Twitter, but he's not our guy. He's the opposite of our guy. And he's putting it together just Albert Breer's comments. And it's like, Cardinals could just outright release DeAndre Hopkins. It's not going to happen.
Right.
The Dallas Cowboys were cap strapped last year. They were in contention, and they had to sell off. They had to sell off Amari Cooper for a 5th-round pick. And they regretted it so much so that they had to go out and get Brandon Cooks this offseason. This is the opposite. The Cardinals don't need to get rid of DeAndre Hopkins. Now, did they think they were going to get more? Probably, after seeing what Devontae and Tyreek Hill went for, Julio Jones a couple of years ago. They had every reason to believe they could get a top, 2 draft pick, a 2nd-round pick. That hasn't happened yet. So, if anything, you just adjust your expectations slightly. You don't go from, hey, I want a 2nd and a player to we're just going to cut him. What the fuck is that? I don't understand how, if that's how Monty Ford is operating, which I don't believe, then we've got real bigger problems than just D-Hop at 30 years old.
I don't know if it's Bill Belichick trying to pull one over a guy that used to reside in the Patriots front office for 15 years in Monty Ford, and he's going there and he thought he was going to give him the old sweet deal at the car dealership, and he's playing hardball, and he's just left the dealership at this point because he feels like he needs the sweetheart deal from his old buddy Monty. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Monty Ford is a first-year GM, but he's not going to just send you DeAndre Hopkins for the – I mean, Breer said they don't want to give up anything as far as draft capital. And as I mentioned, they've got 11 picks. You know, Las Vegas has 12 picks. You've got a couple other teams that would be in the mix for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. There were the 5 teams that they mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs. It's just a waiting game at this point. It's a waiting game, and it's a negotiation. And I understand why it's a tough negotiation because of the variables that go against a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, because other teams, they want to get the best deal for them. So they're going to sit there and they're going to try to wait this thing out. And if Monty Ossenfort's patient, as he should be, I think that the Cardinals can still get a decent deal for DeAndre Hopkins. But Breer said this a couple weeks ago on Sports Talk Radio, and we had echoed those that he's saying that as because of who Albert Breer's sources are and where they come from, right? Most likely in the North Atlantic of the United States. They're in Foxborough, Massachusetts. And what team's trying to drive the price down on DeAndre Hopkins? That organization, the New England Patriots. And then you have Monty Ossenfort digging in. And what are the sources coming out of that are people who have Arizona sources saying about Monty Ossenfort and crew is they're digging in and holding tight as far as their asking price, the second and change. Now, like here we have 2 spectrums for our non-podcast listeners. You can see me, I'm holding my hands up wide, and then we're going to try to come closer and closer and closer until a deal gets done. You know,
I like that visual.
You're welcome for that. It's just, it could take a while. It could be a draft day trade. It could be a post June 1st trade, but or it could be, do they wait until training camp? Do they wait until the start of the regular season next year where teams start to see how thin they are at wide receiver and the difference between a Juju Smith-Schuster and a DeAndre Hopkins?
Cards have an early pick in the 3rd round. What is it, like 68 or 65 or something like that? I mean, like, could you see a scenario in which you package that pick in DeAndre Hopkins? If somebody doesn't get the wideout that they wanted at the tail end of the 1st or early in the 2nd, you take those picks and you move up, right? Could definitely see that happening. Like draft weekend feels more and more plausible by the day. And the Aaron Rodgers thing, I don't think it's apples to oranges, but there is some legitimacy to that's kind of holding up the trade market in general where teams really just can't move on because the Jets want Odell Beckham, but Beckham wants to see, we got to make sure Rodgers goes there, right? And Baltimore put out an offer for Odell. It does feel like this could be like Trent Williams 2.0, where the Niners traded a couple thirds for Trent Williams to inevitably Washington, even though they had a better offer from Minnesota. The difference is Trent Williams, I think, had a no trade clause and really kind of owned that conversation. I love DeAndre Hopkins. He doesn't get to pick his destination. Now he wants to get paid. He wants to get paid the money he's owed and then some. So I agree with Arizona Animal. I think we're going to get to draft night. And for our show and talking points, we would love for this to have happened by now or were to happen in the coming weeks. But it does feel like we're on a collision course, Bull Brock, with X teams on the clock. Shit, somebody just took a player that they wanted. I'm going to ship this pick, whether it's a 2nd, whether it's a 3rd, whatever, to the Cardinals for DeAndre Hopkins. And then suddenly Cardinals are on the clock. Well, how did the Cardinals get on the clock? D-Hop's officially Kansas City Chief or whatever. Because the more and more we get closer to this draft, people are going to talk themselves into and out of prospects, right? And if you could, like the Arizona Cardinals, perfect example, what happened last year in the 1st round? Now, this was probably an overpay in hindsight. Cardinals wanted like 3 to 4 receivers. We were talking on this show, if you remember, if you're a listener to this show, Johan Dotson was the Cardinals' fallback. They love Johan Dotson. They wanted to take him out of Penn State at pick 23. Dude goes in like the top 20. Mm-hmm. So, Steve Keim, and I liked the move at the time, and I thought it showed some foresight, just basically got on the phone with Baltimore and like, all these receivers are gone. Let's do a deal for Hollywood Brown.
The wide receiver bubble popped. It burst last year. It's over.
Yes, it's done. The interior off Zion Johnson, all the interior offensive linemen were gone. So Keim had to pivot. I think we could see the same thing where it's like Quentin Johnson goes higher than people think. The kid out of USC goes high. And then suddenly you're left there if you're Kansas City or one of these teams that like, oh shit, we were going to try to get a wideout early and there's none left. There's Monty Ossenfort, who, by the way, he's playing this exactly like how he played the coaching search, where he took his time. They waited over the course. They didn't sweat it out, and they were the last team to hire a head coach. Don't hate it.
Right. He sees all the cards, right? He knows what they are. He knows that he can play a winning hand. It's just he's going to have to be patient. in order to do so. Let's take a look at DeAndre Hopkins' contract here, because that seems to be the big thing. Because the Ian Rappaport went on Pat McAfee, and McAfee asked Rap Sheet about that report from Breer, and Rap Sheet basically said he doesn't think the Cardinals are going to release DeAndre Hopkins. He's a logical thinker, right? He's not going to be irrational
Friend
at
of
this
the
point.
show. There's a reason.
Absolutely. DeAndre Hopkins' contract, both of those guys, by the way, all three of those guys have been on the show, McAfee, Breer, and Ian Rappaport. But his base salary, D-Hops, is just under $19.5 million. As far as his cap hit, it's the largest on the team, at over $30 million, almost $31 million cap hit. If they were to trade or cut DeAndre Hopkins before June 1st, they get $22.6 million in dead cap, but they get 8.1 in cap savings. If they do it post, it kind of splits that $22 million dead cap figure over 2022 and 2023. Or I'm sorry, 2023 and 2024. But you get close to $19.5 million in cap savings in 2023. So, I mean, it would benefit the Cardinals to wait until after the draft, but you gotta strike in the situation like this with DeAndre Hopkins, with the variable of his age. He's going to be 31. His contract, he's going to have to, according to Rappaport, wherever he goes, he's going to have to adjust it, right? And then as far as he's played in half the games the last 2 seasons, his availability. And then one reporter was saying, how his tenures in the last 2 spots in Houston and Arizona have kind of soured, which I would kind of disagree with. But you can take that into consideration if you want. But I think there are 3 strikes against him, or variables that have going against you, to where whenever this market heats up, pre-June 1st or post-June 1st, you got to get a deal done then.
Yeah, and I might be in the minority here. I like eat the money now. I don't want dead money pushed to 2024. Like, you're not spending the money that you have. You have money available now. Fall on that grenade now. Well,
that's what I was feeling. That's how I felt about, Rodney Hudson. They had a decision to make,
right?
Were they going to cut him pre-June 1st or post-June 1st? And they ended up, doing it pre, and because they didn't have to, he failed a physical and they didn't have to figure that out, as far as things went cap wise.
You're taking grenades left and right. Like, this free agent market wasn't great. You're already resetting. It's a rebuild now. You're all in on draft picks. Like, eat the money. Who cares? You're not spending that money on any. No one's getting big time contracts from here on out. Nobody's really going to get multi-year contracts. Everybody's on a singular 1-year contract. Even Odell Beckham's going to sign a 1-year deal. So we've reached that point. It's not going to affect your comp picks that you get. Just eat that. I want to get to this question here, Jason, because this is a question a lot of people have been asking on the Twitter streets, because no one wants to see Hopkins not play for this team. But then you also don't want to give him away for a ham sandwich. Jason's saying, if there's no trade, how possible is it to restructure and keep him for maybe 3 more years? It's a great question. This franchise wants to be in the business of playing and paying younger players. And Hopkins, the timing of, I think, where he wants to be in his career just doesn't sync up. Like, the Cardinals are going to have Kyler Murray. Cardinals are running a new offense, right? Now, Hopkins, if he was here in August and September, would obviously be a focal point of Drew Petzing's offense. But I don't think, they're showing you now, they are not in the business of, with where this franchise and this roster in particular, Bo, is at, extending players in their 30s. This is not the same team that it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, and everybody's crushing it in the chat, including Jason. And there was this comment down here about Kurt Warner's comments on Arizona Sports, and I don't want to misrepresent what Kurt said, and I'm just going off of what Blaine says here. This morning on Arizona Sports, Kurt Warner said they are tanking if you trade him in regards to DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't want to crush one of the organization's, this franchise's greatest players and Kurt Warner, but I disagree with that. I mean, we've known this the entire offseason. This is a rebuild. Now, losing football games and not having the best roster, that's a product of this, right? Mm-hmm. But as far as, if you move off of him, if you trade him, no, you're taking one of your biggest, best assets, and you're trying to recoup draft capital in order to rebuild this entire roster. So I disagree with that. I don't think that they're actively saying, hey, we want to have the worst record in 2023, because what does that do for? I mean, they don't need to tank for a player in particular unless they want Caleb Williams or Drake May. They've got their quarterback. They seem like they're content with Kyler Murray. They want to move forward with Kyler Murray as their quarterback. They just need him to get healthy. He's not going to be healthy to start the season. So they're starting to gear themselves up towards the 2024 offseason. They're going to be bad, but like to say that they're tanking, what's the point to tank if you don't want to be you don't need to be the worst team in the league?
Also, they won 2 games with Hopkins last year out of what, like 9? They went like 2-7 when Hopkins was back from his injury. Remember, he missed 8 games. He came back. They beat the New Orleans Saints and they beat the Rams, and they were terrible. And then they sat him at the end of it. Like this team, I love D-Hop. They're not a D-Hop away from contending for a postseason berth, and they're going to have to win a different kind of way, a style of football that they haven't had to do so in the past. Where what we think is going to be the offense, it's going to be a run game. It's going to look very much like Cleveland. You know, we've heard there's some San Francisco elements to that. Obviously you would want DeAndre Hopkins a part of your team, Bo Brock, but just where this team is, and if you looked around, the landscape of the internet, like last in a lot of power rankings, right? And so does it make sense to keep a player who's over 30 years old, who's that expensive, who theoretically could get you some draft capital back? Does it make sense to hang on to him? If the answer to teams' response is, you just release him, then we'll take him, then you fucking keep him. And you make teams sweat it out until the trade deadline, and then you ship him out of town and get a pick. I'm still of the mindset, if you don't get a top 100 pick, that's a very unfortunate way to kick off Austin Ford's era, because there has not been a signature move in free agency that you can say, that's my GM. They haven't had the trade down yet, although we all anticipate that's coming, and we can celebrate that. I need to see a top 100 pick for DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm sure, they're feeling pressure. Michael Bidwell's feeling pressure. Hopkins is all over the stadium. His jersey's all over the valley. You're really compounding what Houston did once upon a time, where they gave Hopkins away. You can't do the same thing. While the price tag has gone down, we cannot get into the business of talking about trading DeAndre Hopkins for a day 3 pick. That's just not good business.
No, it's not. It would be kind of taking one of your best assets. Now I think that the 3rd overall pick is something that's gone above that, right? That's your main negotiation tool as far as trying to really jumpstart this rebuild. But I think I don't think they were prepared for DeAndre Hopkins market to be this kind of up and down, this volatile. They thought, hey, we're going to be able to get, we're going to ask for a first. We're going to be content with getting a second, maybe some change, and we'll call it a day. And both sides will be happy, because we'll probably send DeAndre Hopkins somewhere he feels like he can contend right away. But now, it's come down to, all right, we got to recoup here. We got to figure out, what direction this is going to go, and what team's going to be able to give us something close to what we're looking for. Because you're right. The optics of this, I know they're not everything, but they're important for a first-year GM and a first-year coach, because, you've got one of the franchise greats in Kurt Warner saying, hey, if you trade him, it's fully transparent that you're tanking. It's like, no, they're rebuilding. They're cleaning up this mess. And DeAndre Hopkins just happens to be a guy where both sides would benefit from a divorce.
Jalen saying Johnny is the king of the Cardinals, are not an insert player name away from contending. They'll never be a player away if you don't have effing good players. DeAndre Hopkins makes everybody better. But Jalen, look at their defensive line, right? Look at their cornerback room. They have no proven pass rushers, right? They have no interior offensive line. Outside of D-Hop, they've got a lot of questions at receiver, right? James Conner's old. They don't have Kyler Murray to begin the year. It's if you can get something worthy in return, you need to trade him. That's always kind of been my mindset, which is dating back to when we had Jordan Schultz on the show back in January. But I am not of the mindset, just get rid of him to get rid of him. That's a joke.
Right.
That's a joke. You sell tickets to State Farm Stadium this weekend. You get people excited about it, about him being a part of your team, at least for another year. But you don't just give him away. That's not good business.
Look at CB Lamb coming in the chat. Breaks it down as simplest as possible. This team is in need of major roster reconstruction, so why not trade for more picks? That's what there was a great tweet out today that broke down, as far as each team's draft capital, what they have at their disposal, and they ranked them, right? And they kind of had them in different tiers as far as, just overall draft capital, total draft picks, rounds 1 through 3 picks, and then day 3 picks. And then you have the Houston Texans, the Panthers, and the Seahawks, the Lions, and then the Arizona Cardinals. So they're top 5 right now as far as draft capital goes, ratings go. Graham Barfield is the guy. You can look him up on Twitter. He tweeted this out. The Arizona Cardinals have the ability to jumpstart this thing by adding to a top 5 draft capital, as it stands right now. They could probably get into top 3 and pretty much set up your first-year GM to have success. A blind squirrel finding nuts in the draft with that many picks.
And then everything we're hearing with this draft, and you guys can make your own self-assessments as you go through the next 4 weeks, but this draft isn't top-heavy. Like, we don't have 25 to 30 guys who are bona fide blue chip or first-round picks. But everything that we're hearing, we're being told, this draft is incredibly deep on day 2 and day 3. Like, the Cardinals ought to be able to go find quality contributors and starters from the second round on. Obviously, you want whomever that first pick is, whether it's Will Anderson Jr. or Christian Gonzalez or whomever, to be a Pro Bowler. But they are going to be able to fill out the meat of the roster and take a bunch of swings at quality players from hopefully good programs, good schools on day 2 and day 3. And that would make me feel good if I'm a Cardinal fan. It's like, shit, we got 6 picks on day 2. That should be 6 starters, and let the chips fall where they may. And let's see a real GM operate on day 3 of the NFL draft, where a lot of teams find a George Kittle, right? Good quality players. The Cardinals essentially punted on day 3 of the draft under Steve Keim. So again, they're not in the business. And Michael Bidwell said this a couple weeks back. They're not going to fill every need this offseason. But what you can do is, the more picks you give yourself flexibility. They could trade back into next year. They could take advantage of, and then this is what I think Monty's going to do. They're going to take advantage of desperate teams. The Cardinals have no reason to be desperate.
Right.
Like, the fan base knows where you're at. You don't have your quarterback. You're not giving DeAndre Hopkins away, and you're not giving away pick number 3. You're going to make teams bid for both of your entities, and hopefully they get desperate. We're going to talk about pick number 3, Brack, here in a second. But first, how great of a time was it? BetMGM Sportsbook over the weekend, Saturday, NCAA tournament, watch along. Brought my son, had a great time, great environment. If you want to go hang out, lay some lines, grab some good food. Again, it is the new home of PHNX Cardinals this coming fall. Game day every single Sunday, home and away. We're going to have a setup there. If you have not seen it out in Glendale, it is a sight to behold. And if you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, let me tell you, use bonus code PHNX, and you're going to get up to 200 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Super simple. Here's how it works. You got to download the BetMGM app, sign up using bonus code PHNX, place a pregame moneyline wager in the amount of at least 10 bones on any market at standard odd pricing, and you're going to get 200 in bonus bets instantly, regardless of the outcome of your wager. My guy, Brack, did it pregame. Unfortunately for him, FAU didn't take down the dub, but he still got his 200 in bonus bets. Right. And just make sure you use the promo code.
You're just going to tell people that I put 200 on the game there?
Did you?
No,
Did you? No, I said you put it.
It's up to 200. Thank you. Yeah, but regardless, it was a win-win, right? It would have been a win-win-win if FAU could have played a little defense on the final possession. That would have been nice. But yeah, it felt like I didn't even the stakes were very low that they lost. I get to watch a great game, great finish. I just didn't get to have the thrill of victory. I got it in the second game on the BetMGM map, getting UConn -5.5. That was nice.
Yeah, I should have been on that with you. Listen, they can't all be winners, but my winner tonight, pick of the week, is I'm going to go San Diego State money line on BetMGM Sportsbook plus 310. So check that out. Check this out. Listen to our guy Shane talk about this disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
Love to see it. We also had some Four Peaks on tap.
We
Mr.
did, yeah.
Brock.
They had it on tap there at the BetMGM Sportsbook out there at State Farm Stadium. They've got the Wow Wheat. They've got Kilt Lifter. And if you need a little bit more Four Peaks in your life, go check them out. 8th Street in Tempe. That's going to be the site of our NFL draft party. We're going to be hanging out there the first round the entire time. Johnny, myself, some guests that are going to join us, plus the entire PHNX Sports crew. We're going to be hanging out, drinking Four Peaks, eating great Four Peaks food, enjoying all the vibes. We're going to have the draft on TV, plus other sporting events all around you. Come and join us out there, Four Peaks, April 27th. Of course, it's a Thursday. That's when the first round of the draft goes down now that it's in prime time from Kansas City. We're going to be in Tempe. Hang out with us there. Enjoy the Kilt Lifter. Enjoy, the several IPAs that they have there. They've got the new green tea lager, which is delicious. I had it the last Wednesday that we were out there. It was unbelievable. And it has the number one wheat beer in Arizona, the Wow Wheat. Can't go wrong there. And you had the bourbon barrel selection where they've got all their bourbon barrels. They'll age their beer that they brew on location there. It's so smooth. You got to test it out for yourself. Four Peaks, got to be 21 years or older. Check out the events on their calendar, fourpeaks.com/events. Got to be 21 years or older, but Four Peaks, can't go wrong there.
Our draft party is 100% free, and it's free because we love all of you and we want to party with you on the night of round one, April 27th, live from Four Peaks in Tempe. We're going to get a sign-up sheet just to get a head count out to you ASAP. Should have that this week. Bring your friends, bring your family. We are humbled by the amount of engagements, messages of people wanting to come party, because this is really our kickoff for PHNX Cardinals of the new year, and we want to do it with you. And what better night than the Cardinals kicking off the new era of Arizona football. And speaking of kicking it off, hopefully they're going to do that, Bull Brock, with a bounty of picks. Now, I'm not sure how relevant this is, given that, Monty Ossenfort's first day on the job, he's likely calling the Tennessee Titans, talking about trading down. But there was a report this weekend, Bo, from Daniel Jeremiah that supposedly, and I think he said this on radio, and forgive me, I don't know who the source was, but said that the Titans want to trade up, or they're engaged in trading up to pick 3. We have been telling you guys for some time that the Cardinals had at least 3 suitors, and we have included Tennessee in those conversations. So we talked about Vegas, we talked about another team, and then Tennessee was always that kind of that third team to watch, but they're going to have to pay the most because they're at pick 11, Bo Brock. But it makes sense. Theoretically, jumping a team like Indianapolis in your own division, Tennessee feels like they're hitting a hard reset, very similar to the Cardinals. Tannehill's back for how long? Derrick Henry's probably on his last legs there. That roster needs a reset. Doesn't sound like Malik Willis did anything for him last year. What does the Titans do for you at pick 11? Is that too far for Arizona, do you think, to move
No,
down?
It's right on the outside looking in, right? 11th. You might not get an interview with Jalen Carter since his agent believes so strongly he's a top 10 pick. Drew Rosenhaus saying he's a family guy, and he's not even going to take interviews outside of the top 10 picks, which is just ridiculous. Go well for him, sure. But here are your serious trade-up teams, right? Vegas, we know that, sitting there at 7. You got Tennessee at 11. You got Indy at 4. And you got Seattle probably at 5.
And Atlanta. I would include Atlanta too. I think
Atlanta, Arthur Smith and everybody from the Falcons organization right now saying all the nice things about Desmond Ridder. Us here in Arizona, we know better. Josh is our guy. Remember that? Josh is our guy. Old Cliff Kingsbury, his first OTAs before the draft. Josh Rosen, he doubled down on him. And guess who wasn't the quarterback come the season? Josh Rosen. He got a one-way ticket to Miami, and then a couple different organizations after that. But your serious trade-up teams, Vegas, Tennessee, Indianapolis, and probably Seattle. Let's throw in Atlanta because we know better.
You said in the chat, like Detroit, they could come
Detroit,
from
sure, but I do believe Dan Campbell a little bit more when he said Goff is their guy, sure. And they're sitting there at 6, and they seem like a team that feels like they could put their draft capital towards the roster, and they feel content with a guy like Goff. But yeah, crazier things have happened. But Ian Rappaport, it's like anytime Rap Sheet goes on McAfee, we just report. It's like we're just like secondhand McAfee here. But he said they're 100% as far as the Titans, 100% taking calls and making phone calls in efforts to move up the draft board. And As far as would he be surprised if they made a move? No. So you look at the Tennessee Titans and what they have as far as draft capital, and we do this with a lot of the teams that have been tied to the Arizona Cardinals and trading up for third. We've got what Tennessee has for their 2023 NFL draft picks. Round one, obviously 11. Let's take a look at this for our YouTube viewers here. We've got round one, we've got pick 11. Pick two, or round two, they've got 41. Round three, they have 72. Round five, 147. Round six, 186. And round seven, 228. So only 6 picks for the Titans. So they have to, be very creative with it. I'm sure it would probably involve, if it's a pickup, to move up from 11 to 3. It would have to absolutely, just like most of these trade packages, include a 2024 first round pick. And then, I don't know if it's just like 11, 41, a 2024, and then you look at maybe a day 3 pick.
Yeah, I look at this and I'm like, unlike Vegas, who we all feel like they could struggle big time, and so you obviously want their future one. I want Tennessee's future one too. Like, that's a non-starter. Like, you start with that. I think I'd have to have like their first 3 picks this year. So you got to go 1, 2, 3. One more time, Jacob. Can I see that graphic? I need 11, obviously, but that's a swap. So that's basically even currency. I need 41. I need 72. And I need your 2024 first round pick. And I don't even know if that will suffice. I know a lot of people in the chat are saying, well, look what the Niners gave up. 3 firsts to come up to 3 to get Trey Lance once upon a time. They gave up 3 ones. I mean, like, you gotta find a team to make a deal. But I would feel good about your top 3 picks this year, your 1 next year, and then maybe they kick in an additional pick, maybe a 3 next year. So 2 1s, 2 1s, a 2 and 2 3s would probably suffice for me, because I mean, like, Vrabel's a good coach. I could see them, screwing around and winning 8 games next year. Whereas, like, Vegas is my preferred option. Colts, we'll see, because you feel like Vegas is going to be in the top 10 next year. I mean, like, Tennessee, that pick, I want it, but it could be 17. It could be 20. You never know. So I do think, listen, if you're Tennessee and you need your quarterback of the future, and you're kind of in middling land with the teams that are always competitive, and you're never going to suck enough with Mike Vrabel, this is the time, because of the relationship you have with Monty Ossenfort. You have somebody that hopefully you can trust enough that was in your building to come up and say, like, Cardinals, give us Anthony Richardson. We love Anthony Richardson, the player, the person. Let's make a deal, because there's no guarantee, to my earlier point, that you're going to be in a position to come up, and you don't know who's going to have the keys to the castle next year too. Those top 2 picking teams, Bo Brock, next year are taking those 2 quarterbacks, conceivably. Like, shit, right. Like, we're not going to be able to do a show next year if the Cardinals are picking 1 or 2 and not talk about the fact that they could take a quarterback. Like, that's a reality we'll have to live, like all the other teams that are in that position. So if you're Tennessee and you're not in that driver's seat of 1 and 2 next year, assuming somebody else doesn't emerge, when are you going to have a ticket like this to come up and get a bona fide top quarterback prospect? That's why I think it makes so much sense. Plus your relationship with Ossenfort.
Right. And then what you could potentially do in the later stages of the career of Derrick Henry, to couple him with a dual threat guy like a Richardson, and what he could do with the young receiver Burks there. And I think that it would fit what they want to try to do offensively. I mean, remember back in COVID times, what was Mike Vrabel's on his mask? Run the damn football, right?
Yeah.
It's what they like to do. It's part of their identity. So, a quarterback that can run, be dual threat, but also throw the shit out of the football like Richardson did. What does it do for the Arizona Cardinals, though? I know the haul, like that goes without saying. Like, the package of picks comes in 11, though. If we're sitting here, we jump in the DeLorean, we got into 88.
I can have that
we're
conversation
in the future
right now.
Here, and we're on draft day. Who are they taking 11th overall right now?
You're in a group of players.
It changes drastically, doesn't it? I mean,
we're fine. We're chilling.
I know you're fine. You don't have to talk me back.
As our producer Emma always says, we chilling. Here's what we're doing. Okay, you would assume.
Don't ever say that again.
You would assume Will Anderson's gone. You would assume Christian Gonzalez is gone, right? Yep. I mean, Jalen Carter's not an option, right? I would assume the best tackle, whether it's Skoronski or Paris Johnson Jr. is gone. You're going to be in that next tier. You're going to look at some second-tier defensive ends. I would say the kid out of Iowa is interesting. I would
Luke
say,
Van Ness.
yep, I would take a look at some of the Clemson defensive linemen. And I would say if Tyree Wilson is still sniffing around, if he's still hanging around there, listen, when 4 quarterbacks presumably go in the top 10 or at least 3, it pushes good players down. And I also think that there's not a huge difference between like the 3rd best player and the 7th best player in this draft, non-quarterbacks withstanding. So there's also a chance that a tight end goes high. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine because if there was that singular player available, now the Cardinals would stick and pick, but there's not that player. Right? I mean, we saw tweets today, people picking apart Will Anderson's tape, which like is ridiculous, but at the same time, it's happening. There is no Jamar Chase. There is no Penei Sewell. Blue chip prospects that come along that can change your franchise as a singular entity. At least I don't think so. And I think that you would then have your choice. Let's say Richardson goes 3. So you've got 4 through 11. That's 7 picks. I would say those guys outside of maybe Anderson are going to be pretty comparable to one another. You're going to be okay. Micah Parsons once upon a time went 11th overall.
Isn't Rob Van Winkle, isn't that Vanilla Ice? I don't think that's a real, that's not
Listen,
a real
I don't want to take
card.
defensive ends from Iowa, but then I just watched Iowa's women's basketball.
When you think you can, if you want a premium position, if you want an edge rusher, if you want a corner, this is the draft to do it, right? There's no like generational type player at those positions, but there's really solid prospects at those positions. So yeah, there are some guys as far as coming off the edge that like a Van Ness that's going to be available around there. You've got, if Christian Gonzalez is gone, Devin Witherspoon's gone, Joey Porter's probably right in that ballpark range. You've got Clemson's pro day tomorrow. I'm already seeing Brian Breesy in the chat, which is a good name. He's more interior defensive line, which might be the weakest spot on the entire roster for the Arizona Cardinals, or like a Miles Murphy, if you want to stay on the edge, who's going to perform at his pro day. So it really is going to be interesting to see, and I agree. I think Tyree Wilson's probably ballpark. So especially when you've got the potential, you've got the kid out of Pittsburgh, the defensive tackle who blew people away at the combine. So I think you still have some really intriguing prospects, more risk as far are they going to be able to compete and make an impact, year one. But this is a longer play than that by trading down, right? I mean, if you're going to stick and pick, you take the guy that can compete, right away in a Will Anderson. But if you're trading down for more assets in a future one, this is that's the type of prospect you're looking at. We should probably try to pull off this trade with Tennessee for our mock draft tomorrow when we do it live again.
100%. We will make a note of that. The more I think about it, I'm like those top 2 corners you would presume are going to be gone. I think you're playing in the sandbox of a second-tier defensive end or a quality offensive tackle falls to you because they've been working out a lot of tackles. It feels like they want to be in a position to say goodbye to DJ Humphries. Maybe you let the tackle play guard the first year, assuming that they can do that. That feels like a position where the Cardinals can feel good about, the draft value of taking a tackle, 11th overall, whereas like off-ball linebackers, Bijan Robinson, even a wide receiver, there's a tight end. You can just take all those positions and move them to the side. It's going to be an impact front 7, edge rusher, defensive tackle, or an offensive lineman, presumably. That's the space we're living in if you go down to 11 because those top 2 corners are gone. Soul Pancakes, we're finally going to get to your super chat. $5. Thank you so much, Soul Pancakes, supporter of the show. When it's Kyler, pay him all the money and defend him. When it's Isaiah, bash him to no end. How about those double standards? Kyler Murray plays quarterback, Soul Pancakes. Isaiah Simmons plays what? Can anybody tell me Isaiah Simmons' position? Hello? And Kyler Murray directly led to many, many wins for this franchise. I don't love the regression from Kyler last year. I'm going to put a lot of that on Cliff Kingsbury. Isaiah Simmons is going to have a chance to play himself into a nice contract, whether it be for the Cardinals or somebody else. He's got Jonathan Gannon, a very pro player, linebacker, back 7 kind of coach. And I've been of the mindset, like if he can't work with Jonathan Gannon, it's going to be hard for him to stick around.
It's this organization, this new regime is cleaning up, the mess that the previous regime made, right? And they're trying to figure this out roster-wise and try to get it to neutral so in the 2024 offseason, they can start building this thing and hopefully with some more building blocks from this year's draft. But to like, if you're asking about his 5th-year contract, why do you not just kind of sign off on it? I think it's pretty simple. When you look at Isaiah Simmons and you're looking for the consistency, you haven't received it yet. And that's not, an indictment on Isaiah Simmons. Obviously, he came into a situation with Vance Joseph as his DC and a GM that just drafted him on his versatility without a goal in mind of where he was going to play. I think Johnny and myself, we really like Isaiah Simmons and what his potential is, right? And what we've seen, like him stuffing Derrick Henry at the goal line, or him making game-changing plays last season on, a handful of game-changing plays, but you haven't seen the consistency enough where you see guys like Jerome Baker, Devondre Campbell, and Bobby Okereke making around the same money that you would have to pick up his option year for, and you're not seeing the consistent play that you get from those guys. So it's tough. You don't know where you're playing him. You don't know, like, if you'll ever get that consistency, but you want to just bet on him for 1 year, where this organization is now filled with guys who the previous organizations that they work for, they don't invest that type of money at that position, at the stand-up linebacker position. So it's not, we don't dislike Isaiah Simmons. I just think that all signs are pointing to them not picking it up.
Yeah, it's a position that's not valued in today's NFL. It's just not. Like, if it was, then teams would be like, there was somebody sent me, PFF put out like the top linebacker drafted in each of the last 10 drafts. The Cardinals are the only team that's done it multiple times, and a bunch of the other picks haven't worked out. And Soul Pancake says he's a linebacker safety. Cardinals have 2 good safeties, and you could argue, are those good contracts with Jalen Thompson? We're going to find out how much Gannon and company value that contract, but this team has no defensive linemen. This team has no interior offensive lineman to speak of. They have no gifted, proven edge rusher. So to sit here and say, but we can just kind of splurge on Simmons, tweener, $12.5 million 5th-year option. I'm sorry. They signed Kazir White for pennies on the dollar, who has proven more than Isaiah Simmons. Zaven Collins is cheap on his rookie deal and is the more prototypical middle linebacker. I mean, that will linebacker job is up for grabs. I don't think that they're going to splurge on a 12.5 will linebacker. We've talked about it, Soul Pancakes, on this show many, many times. And it's not because he snubbed us. Does that play a part in my, willingness to bring it up unprompted? Maybe, but shit, look at the intro. He's in the intro. And I want to see players do well. Like, I ate a bunch of crow, and I'm like, I don't see it with Hassan Reddick. And then he proved everybody wrong. Right. And I'm like, go get your money. Cardinals screwed up your development. They do not deserve to keep you. Go and get paid. And thankfully he did, and he's been a class act. But the difference is, like, Isaiah Simmons plays a position that teams don't care about anymore. They just don't. Like, you need them on your team, just like you need running backs, but you're not giving big money to those positions. And when the Cardinals need literally everything, and you've got a player that's it'd be one thing if you was Roquan, plug and play, and you knew star, right? He's Fred Warner. There are too many question marks with Isaiah Simmons right now, and then he plays a devalued position. It's like Hopkins. It just doesn't add up for this team right now. Maybe somebody else.
Right. And like Monty can come in, Jonathan Gannon can come in, and they can watch as much film as they want, and they'll see the flashes, and then they'll see the plays where, like, where was he? Did he know where he was supposed to be? I mean, you hope they didn't see the KC game. I mean, but that plays into the equation. I mean, it's just I don't think there's unfortunately, you don't have enough data that points to
what would Isaiah Simmons get on the open market
a gigantic leap of faith based on who he was 4 years ago at Clemson, and thinking that you can be the one to unlock that. Like, I like the confidence, but as far as a business decision, it's just not a smart one.
Okay, so if Isaiah Simmons is available right now on the open market to trade for, somebody has to give up a pick. What is he getting in return?
That's tough. I mean, that's really tough. I mean, you'd have a tough time to get. I think they got Kadarius Toney. He fetched the 3rd round pick from the Chiefs to the Giants. So that's probably where you're at.
I mean, DeAndre Hopkins can't get a 3rd, but Isaiah Simmons is getting a 3rd. I know he's younger.
He's a lot younger.
But I would say if Han shot first, a 4th is what I would imagine he would fetch. Soul Pancakes, thank you again. Another $5 super chat. Linebacker, safety, boys. He's apex in most coverage schemes. Kyler accounts for $51 million. Listen, Kyler plays quarterback.
Kyler doesn't account for $51 million yet. He's 16. He's on his 5th-year option technically, and then his extension will kick in next year. He's $16 million towards the cap.
He plays quarterback. And again, like if you had a chance, you'd redo that contract because he got hurt. You'd want to keep your options open. But we celebrated the extension at the time because he plays the most important position. Because when he plays, they win games, or they typically did. And he came and took over a team and elevated it by himself when he was a rookie. Like Isaiah Simmons, now I can put it on the coaching staff. And that's, I will eat infinite amount of crow soul pancakes. If Gannon transforms him into an all-pro, we're going to have a different conversation. But I think Kyler Murray succeeded despite coaching. Isaiah Simmons hasn't been able to do that. And I was a big critic of Vance Joseph and how they used him and how he stunted his growth. Maybe his career would have been different, but he's got an opportunity.
He got roasted by Kelsey, who everybody gets roasted by Kelsey, and then he got benched for 2 consecutive games. That's like that's unacceptable.
But is that a Vance Joseph issue though? Or is that an Isaiah Simmons issue, or is it somewhere in between?
I mean, I think it was in between. I would err more on the side of saying the coaching staff fumbled that one. I mean, did they build him back up? It was a nice story the rest of the season. Yeah, I thought he played really well, but I still want to see more from the 8th overall pick. I want to see him unlocked. I do, and I think it's gonna come in the form of a contract year for him this upcoming season.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be an interesting dynamic if they're going to invest in him or not. But somebody we're going to invest in, and vice versa. Our friends at Circle K, premium convenience at a non-premium price. We're so excited to partner with our friends at Circle K. Check out your local Circle K. Best coffee, best beer, best snack selection right after this show is over, before tip-off tonight. Go and load up, stock up for the end. Can't believe I'm saying this, of March Madness at Circle K. Polar Pops, iced coffee for just $1.89. 12 packs of beer for Peaks, $9.99. Red Bull, 12-ounce, Monster, whatever you need at a convenient price. It's the convenience store. Above all, it's Circle K. Make sure you're not missing out all the great stuff they've got going on, Bo Brock, and be stocked up all March Madness long into spring training and out of spring training now. We're tipping off. We're having first pitch for the MLB season. Perfect chance. Go get a dog. If you can't go to the ballpark and get a dog, go get a dog at Circle K. Bring it home and watch the Diamondbacks off to a nice start. Head to circlek.com/store locator. That's circlek.com/store locator to find the nearest Circle K to you.
It's been so fun turning on the Fubo TV, drinking the Four Peaks beer that I bought at Circle K, hanging out on my More Furniture.
Ooh.
There's nothing better than it. Just go home, plop down on the couch, flip on the big screen, and watch all the endless amount of sports, hoops, now baseball, watch some replays as far as football goes. But it doesn't get any better, more comfortable than the furniture that they've got over at More Furniture. You got to check out all their selection right now. Morefurniture.com. That's morfurniture.com. They've got digital door busters that you're going to want to take advantage of. We got the seats that we actually hang out here in studio here at PHNX Studios. They're so comfortable. They look so sleek. And you can have them actually in your living room yourself. You can go to morefurniture.com and find them for a digital doorbuster. You can also find out about the spring savings event that they got going on that has the white glove delivery. If you spend just under $1,000, you can get that free white glove delivery where they'll deliver it to your house. They'll set it up. They'll unpackage it. They'll get rid of all the packaging that you don't want to get rid of, that your wife usually just throws in the garage or throws right next to the actual trash can that you have to then break down, and it becomes a whole process. I'm not bitter about it, but it happens every week at my house. More Furniture, white glove delivery. It helps you get rid of all that and all those unnecessary breakdown moments, and it gets your living room, your dining room, your kids' room, your bedroom set up and as comfortable and looking great as you want it. Check them out, morefurniture.com. That's morefurniture.com.
We got a mock draft on tap tomorrow, mañana, in which we are going to project a trade with Tennessee, try to keep that momentum going. I loved our mock draft last week. We got an A, no brag, but we did pretty well. Dylan Richards, is the Cards team shop back open? Bo Brock, we were at BetMGM Sportsbook this weekend. It was still closed. It has since reopened with the sad news that no new jerseys yet. New draft hats, yes. No new jerseys.
Nope, no new jerseys. Everybody's still looking at the I guess, introduction or bigger use of yellow in everything that they've been doing this offseason, you know, from nameplates to social media graphics. So we'll see what the incorporation or more of an emphasis on yellow goes, how far it goes for the Arizona Cardinals. All we have seen, as you mentioned, is the draft caps. I was going to look to see if Cardinals Game Day, that Twitter account, if they'd done anything since saying it was going to be shut down. No, it's still, that's their last tweet, March 29th. They got, you know, Cardinals Twitter in a frenzy, and they haven't tweeted out since after everybody was trying to play internet sleuths. But we can confirm that the Meekum auto auction did go down. It wasn't just an elaborate front for new uniforms to be put into the team shop.
I'm not going to say I hate them, but I kind of hate them. Somebody tagged me on the team site or NFLshop.com. There's a kind of a beige shirt with the Cardinal logo. And I'm like, I don't know if I can get a breakdown to like, is beige incorporated into the new uniform, or is every team getting a beige shirt? It is going to be it's going to be a sludge as we wait for
Beige,
them.
huh?
Yeah, like a beige, but with a little bit of the same font they typically use, maybe with a little bit of yellow in the bird in the center. It's not a bad looking shirt. But I mean, like if they would allow us, we would go film in the team store, but that would get shut down fairly quickly. So we unfortunately cannot do that. But the Denver Broncos, as the show started, they announced, or they're teasing, white helmets to go with their, presumably their throwback uniform. So everybody's getting a nice kind of mix of updated unis, but our precious Redbirds. But we feel like, I mean, we're in the end game now. We're in the end game of a D-Hop trade. We're in the end game of new uniforms, and then a potential trade down from pick number 3. And we're gonna keep you tabs on it here at PHNX Cardinals podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. And again, clear out your schedule, your calendar. April 27th, 4 Peaks in Tempe, the PHNX Cardinals draft party. Do not miss it. We want to party with all of you. Thank you guys so much. We're coming off our biggest month to date in the month of March, and we know it was because of the endless support that we get from everybody. So go ahead and continue that support if you could. Like this video, share it around, subscribe to PHNX Sports wherever you get your podcasts. For Bo Brack, I'm Johnny Venerable. We'll see you tomorrow.